Okay. Nice.
Yeah, recording in progress.
Recording in progress.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, so how'd the reading go?
It was it was quick and easy. It was interesting. He's very
I read it a couple times.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of historical context that I feel like I still don't have all of it.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's a good place to start. I guess a good place to start is to say, so we did Marx's Communist Manifesto. So we decided we'd do, I guess not necessarily the opposite, but, kind of,
Some people call it the opposite. It doesn't really seem quite like the opposite to me.
Yeah, but we're
a related authoritarian political movement.
So the Doctrine of Fascism by Benito Mussolini.
Yeah. Right.
And
although there's some dispute on that too.
Oh, whether he actually wrote it?
Well, so I think the general idea is that this other guy wrote the first half and he wrote the second half.
Gotcha.
So the historical context stuff was written by somebody else, and the doctrinal stuff was written by Mussolini. I mean, they wrote it together.
Right.
But it was originally published for an encyclopedia in Italy, and then in 1933, a British, I think, magazine editor translated it. And so it was first translated into English in 1933 for a journal called The Living Age.
Oh, interesting. Yeah. Well, and so it looks like he got into power in Italy, right? He was the leader of Italy, right, starting in 1922. Mm-hmm. And his party was, I guess they were the Fascist Party.
Right.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, it was certainly making me realize how ignorant I am of that part of the world during this era. Uh-huh. It's like, obviously I know that Italy was part of the Axis with Japan and Germany, but
right.
Yeah, and I knew Mussolini was the head of Italy, but yeah, I mean, to your point, what you were, I think, about to make about the historical context, he lays out a very interesting narrative of the 19th century.
Mm-hmm.
Is that what you're getting at?
Yeah. Well, the Doctrine of Fascism begins, and actually is probably over half sort of laying out the cultural context that fascism comes out of.
Right, and it's basically in opposition to liberalism, right? It seems like that was, I mean, it's in opposition to a few things, but liberalism seemed to be the big thing.
To democracy in its sort of pure form, to liberalism,
well, the democracy
to what he calls
thing is interesting.
Socialism.
Yeah,
what he calls social, I feel like we should address the word socialism.
Yeah.
Maybe before we start, we should address some things.
Oh, sure.
Based on some of the Reddit conversations.
Yeah, you've been in the trenches. I haven't been paying attention nearly as much as you.
Yeah, you're not helping me at all.
Sorry. Dude, it's been crazy. But yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
Also, yeah.
Yeah, for me too.
No, yeah, for sure.
People hate me. People are so mad.
Yes, they do not like you. So.
Yeah, I know.
I don't know.
They think I'm an idiot.
Yeah, man. I mean, that was the thing. So you sent me this one response, and there were almost so many things to address in it. I was just like, I don't have time to do. I was, on the microscope all day. Yeah, but
we don't have to address that. I think there's a few things that I'm interested in addressing that have to do with.
I was thinking
words.
We should get some of these people on the podcast because that's kind of the thing, though. Is I'm like, it would be like there's so many word definition things where it's like I think I know what people mean, but it's like it takes so long to have a dialogue written. Whereas I almost would like to get, we should ask. I'm kind of being serious.
I mean, ask them. Go for it.
Do you want to come on the podcast? Hey, if there's any Redditors that are listening to this right now and you want to come on the podcast, I'm being serious.
Yeah. Just get in touch. Yeah.
Yeah, well, we have an email, right?
Yeah. I mean, they can find us. Come on.
Yeah, they can find us. It's true. You can find us if you really want to get on the podcast. It's an open invitation.
Right. Well,
not quite open.
We're down, but yeah, it's not totally open.
Yeah. Not anybody can come on. But anyway, yeah.
Anyway, really about meanings, because I feel like this issue comes up a lot when posting online, and I assume it comes up on other platforms too. I just don't really get much engagement on anything but Reddit. But there's a problem, where I'll post something and somebody will say, this whole post is meaningless because that's not what socialism means, or that's not what proletariat means, or something like that. And to me,
it's a way of dismissing.
It's a little bit weird, because arguing about what something actually means, I think, is basically pointless, and it's much more interesting to know what somebody means by it, because I can have an idea of capitalism and you can have another idea of capitalism, and given our own definitions in our own heads, what we're saying makes perfect sense, and then we're still arguing past each other, which is really stupid.
Right. I agree. Although it's interesting, because I think you're actually more of a stickler for vocabulary than I am sometimes. I
think I am sometimes, and I think I can fall into no, a word actually means this or a word actually means this. My ideal is just being consistent within the context that you're talking about. So, within the domain of this is what I mean.
Right.
And I think as long as you stick to that, it's fine. I mean, and you could go crazy and you could just say any word means anything, and nobody's going to understand you then.
Yes. Well, and that's why I feel like part of it is a method to just dismiss people quickly,
Right.
Because it's true. It's like, to even say that's not what socialism means. I don't know what these responses were. I didn't have time to read them all. But, I mean, we established on the last episode that, what socialism actually means depends on who you're asking. To even say that there's a uniform definition, I think is disingenuous. Now, to say that it's not what socialism means to me, that's a different story, right? And then you're right. Then we can maybe have an interesting conversation. But that's why it's like Reddit. I do think that there's just a lot of trolling noise, because I do think there's just some people who like to be kind of just dicks, you know what I mean? Which, it's fine. Well, it's more power to them.
I mean, somebody was sure that I was being a troll.
Right, exactly. So we also just can come off like dicks without meaning to also. That's an important point.
Does it matter if you're a dick? I don't know.
Well, I think that not coming in an aggressive way to begin with, if you're actually trying to have a conversation, yes, because it's like, if you want to get somebody's opinion, then asking him in a nice way is going to be more effective. But anyway, as far as definition of like socialism and liberalism and stuff like that, he even kind of define. It's like, even when he's discussing these things, he's doing it in an amorphous way. And by he, I mean Mussolini and the Doctrine of Fascism.
Well, because he even says something like there are multiple definitions for democracy and socialism. I think he leaves space for the idea that there are different understandings.
Right, and he even at one point says it's the purest form of democracy in some sense is fascism. Hang on, let me get the exact quote. As I said, I texted it to you because I thought it was kind of hilarious. Because he also has another great quote about it later. Fascism is democracy in its purest form, because all would have will as one. Because it's the idea that the whole population has the same will. So if democracy is just the will of the people, then it's 100%.
What's your copy that you're reading? I don't remember that in mine at all.
Uh-oh. Maybe I...
what is that book you have there?
I know, dude. It's a ridiculous cover. I was like, I don't want to get this, but it's the cheapest one on Amazon. Yeah, it's got
Oh, man, if only this podcast had video.
I was very cognizant of... It's just got a big picture of Hitler and Mussolini on the cover.
Oh, wow. I could say I have the copy of the original journal. It was published in English.
Oh, interesting.
I should have just sent that to you.
Yeah. No, it's Zingora Books.
Okay.
It was on Amazon. I don't know. Yeah. This is probably like some like freaking neo-Nazi publicist. Because, yeah, I mean, it's the cover is ridiculous.
Yeah.
Anyway, I didn't mean to.
How does it start? What's the first paragraph?
How does it start? The first paragraph is...
I just want to know if we have the same copy.
Yeah, no, I understand. It's philosophic conception, number 1, right? Fundamental ideas.
Mm-mm.
Like every concrete political conception, fascism is thought and action.
Yeah, I found that one too. That one's different. Mine starts, when, in the now distant March of 1919, I summoned a meeting at Milan through the columns...
That I think was the second.
Is that later?
Part. Yeah, maybe.
That's what it means by the first half and the second half.
Yes, yeah. Political and social doctrine.
Right. So that second half is the part that Mussolini actually wrote.
I read that also, though.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah. Yeah, I was like, this is longer than 10 pages, so that makes sense.
Right.
Okay. Yeah. But okay, so. Then whoever that theorist, this was his conception, he said that, and then that makes sense because then Mussolini goes and says in his own words later, what does he say? Where is it? That dude, there's just so many hilarious quotes.
It's so good.
Fascism doesn't believe in universal peace.
Yep.
Fascists also love their neighbors.
Yeah, right. Yep. But he's got a special meaning for neighbor. Oh, yeah. Man, hang on. I got to call.
Oh, an organized, centralized, authoritarian democracy. He said, then but if there be a different understanding of democracy, if, in other words, democracy can also signify to not push the people back as far as the margins of the state, then fascism may well have been defined by the present writer as an organized, centralized, authoritarian democracy. And the present writer is Renan.
Right.
Yeah.
Is it Renan? Renan?
Yeah, Renan. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. But anyway,
I also like how he kind of talks about his version of fascist democracy is essentially just hijacking democracy to get whatever you as the party want out of it.
Well, yeah. I mean, I was just thinking we should probably just define fascism.
I mean, it's a little tough, but yes. Even after reading this, it's not that easy.
Yeah, well, it's force and thought. It's action and thought. Oh, yeah, that wasn't in the part you read.
Yeah, but that's in there.
Oh, it was? Okay.
Yeah.
But, it's not just a political doctrine. It's like a spiritual thing. Basically, how I think about it is from what the word actually means, fascia, to bind things. So it's binding the state into one thing. And then the state is the supreme being in this doctrine and stuff. And so Mussolini talks a lot about the state as the supreme authority and like whatever that means,
right.
And
everything's purpose is to serve the will of the state, essentially.
Right. Yes. And so there's, confined liberties. But there are, basically it's like all the unnecessary liberties are put to the side. But yeah, that's a very good point. I think centrally it's just everything in the society, its purpose is for the betterment of the state, and the state is this thing that supersedes generations and lives on.
Right.
So everybody becomes basically one with the state. It's like you're the Borg.
But it's not.
I would say are fascist, right?
What's different about the fascists, and this is also from other things I've read from Mussolini, I feel like it's the vibe.
How much have you read from him, Antushka?
The vibe is very different than say the Soviet Union or North Korea or something, which feels very much like the Borg.
Right.
And fascism feels to me much more
Yeah, I was joking about. I mean, I don't actually know the Borg that well. So,
right.
I'm just joking.
Fascism to me feels the reason that I associate it so strongly with progressivism in the U.S. is because there's a big piece of fascism that acknowledges that individuality and markets, corporations, trade unions. Excuse me. I think I swallowed a fly, and it's like.
Yeah.
Anyway, have productivity and efficiency that can be harnessed by the state. And so this idea of maintaining individuality, which he writes about, is that acknowledgement that the state by itself is not going to have the productivity unless the individuals are using their own creativity and productivity to serve that state versus the state subsuming everything. And so it's not everybody actually acting as one, it's everybody acting as an individual in service of the state.
Yes. I think that's a good way of putting it because he
it's
mentions
I think it's a picky distinction but an important one.
Right. Yes, there is some individuality that's retained. But the individuality that's retained is in service of the state.
Right. And Mussolini also talks about not in this, it's some other quote I remember.
But I guess I could be fickle and be like, well, is that true individuality?
No, I don't think it is true individuality. No, it's not.
Yes.
In the same way that, the corporatism of either fascism or progressivism is not, capitalism.
Right.
Anyway, but he also talks about the press and the media. This is in other quotes. I did a silly thing once where I did a series of quotes from famous totalitarians of the 20th century. And he had this whole thing about how the press's job is essentially to create an illusion of reality for the people so that the people will, on their own accord, do what the state wants. That reality doesn't exist other than what can be sort of conjured for the people to believe. But what fascists want is the people acting of their own accord that just happens to be exactly what the state wants.
Right. Yes.
Which is, I think, where he gets into the whole fascists do not oppose religion, and fascists sort of pursue this idea of heroicism among men and struggle and all of these things that are sort of natural incentive structures for people, and for fascism to kind of jump onto those things and harness them to essentially get support from the people that it needs support from. He didn't write that. This is my interpretation of it.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think I missed that. But I do agree generally with what you're saying, as in, I think that jives with how I was interpreting it. And I think maybe the really central point that he kept going back to is that fascism was collectivism, kind of. It was a type of collectivism. And then liberalism was sovereignty of the individual. And so that's why they were sort of diametrically opposed to one another. And fascism was the response. He called the 19th century the liberalism century. And he was saying, well, this will be the state, the century of the state, the century of authority, the century of fascism. And it almost became that way, right?
Yes. I mean, I think it did.
Right. Yeah. So, a few things. This is always my... okay. So then World War II was essentially, in your opinion, two fascists fighting each other. Two fascist groups fighting each other.
I mean... like the US / the UK v Italy, Germany.
Yes.
I would say that the Soviets were not... I wouldn't call the Soviets fascist. I would call them socialist, communist, something like that.
No. In World War II, the Soviets... Oh, you're saying on our side. Yeah. I guess spearheaded by fascists. How about that? Also, wait, you wouldn't call them fascists?
The Soviets?
Huh.
Not really. I mean, that. I know that, like... So there's the Ayn Rand calls them all socialists and just whatever. And that's kind of what I was doing in my post last week. The sort of the broad brush to describe all of them. But I think if we're being specific...
But they were kind of fascist.
What?
They were kind of fascist. Stalinism?
Yeah.
That wasn't fascist?
Yes, but I think that I also wouldn't call Marx a fascist in a technical sense. And I wouldn't call Lenin a fascist.
Well, nobody would call FDR a fascist in a technical sense.
I would call FDR a progressive in a technical sense.
Okay. So the reason I'm getting at this, though, is that because I was going to say it seems like fascism lost, was defeated.
Yeah.
Okay, so you agree with that?
Yes. I have my thing that I think that progressivism and fascism are like sister ideologies.
Well, it's also like there's a fascist essence to the progressivism, but it's not fascist in the sense of Mussolini fascism.
I think it is.
But it's fascist in the sense of, well, no, but it is different because, I mean, again, Mussolini is saying things like fascism is against universal peace. Mm-hmm. And I don't think that was the progressives'
War
doctrine.
Is the health of the state? All that stuff?
War is the health of, is that what they were saying?
I mean, that is the progressive doctrine. FDR was trying really hard to get us into war. FDR wasn't talking about peace.
No, but I guess what I'm saying, and look, I don't understand who the theorists of the progressives were enough, but you're saying that war is, that idea is part of their doctrine. Okay. Yeah, then that's against universal
So
peace.
War is the health of the state is a Randolph Bourne quote, who is a Columbia University progressive who was like an advisor I believe, in the FDR administration. I mean, there was this huge movement coming out of Columbia University and this whole progressive era. Also, Margaret Sanger, the...
right.
Exactly. She was a big early progressive writer. This whole thing.
She said war is the health of the state.
I think so. I mean, she talks about how it's what the communists are wrong about is that they don't have any source of productivity. And so what the progressives
it's interesting, though,
did that I think...
Because, wasn't Wallace a progressive? Wallace, FDR's vice president, and he was very anti-war, which is why it's I guess maybe it's a wing of the progressives, but is it all of them? I
mean, but what did the major, both major progressive presidents in the 20th century do? They got us into the world wars.
It's true. No,
I mean, those are the biggest wars in history.
Well, yeah. No, I mean, the point is taken. So then you would call them fascist, though. This is what I'm trying to get at.
So I call them fascist in the sense that, socialist, communist, what's the difference? If I'm in that mode, yes, they're fascist. But there are differences. And I'm saying that if we're being specific and we're zooming in, they are not literally the same thing, but I think that in essence they are the same thing.
Yeah. Yeah, which is collectivism, I guess.
Yes, all forms of collectivism, yes.
Yeah. So then communism is fascist in that sense.
I wouldn't call fascist... the thing about calling them all fascists is I don't see fascist as the root ideology.
Well, it's interesting because Mussolini...
Mussolini. Yeah.
Jesus Christ. It's been a long day. Mussolini, though, Signori, he...
that cover, man, every time I see it.
Yeah, I didn't even remember
Mussolini.
what I was saying, man.
Signore.
I know, but I threw myself off so much.
I said in essence they're the same,
so,
and I think you were trying to make it. Oh, but I was saying fascism isn't the root ideology.
Yeah, and he certainly is trying to make it out to be. It seems like fascism and collectivism are like one of the same, or at least he's using it, because again, that's how he's using it. He's again also talking in this dialectical stance of, we had this thing, so now the logical next step is this completely opposite form.
I mean, it sounds like Marx, actually.
Well, that's my point exactly. Every big theorist, I think, understands this. Is like there's an inflection point in history, and whether it's cognizant or not, one of the reasons that these doctrines hit is because at that point, the society is ready for the counter force. And you see that in everything. In philosophical thought, you'll have one philosophical thought come, and then the next generation will work to basically completely denounce it. And I think we're kind of seeing that now when people talk about the, quote, death of wokeism, which was the last 30 years or so. And you're seeing, I would say, a lot more overt opposition to that sort of thought now than I think you had at any point in the last 30, even maybe 40 years. And so the point of so Mussolini, I think it kind of makes sense that they came up at that point, and also that the progressives came up, because he was also even kind of saying that, right? Because when he was writing this, nobody had gone to war with anybody, and
he wrote this after World War I.
Out.
So between the wars.
I was thinking, but I was thinking I was thinking about World War II, though, and in terms of the new regimes. Like, these were all new regimes that had formed. Yeah. You're right that the countries had gone to war, but Hitler and Mussolini weren't at war with FDR. And, that's what I was referring to. It's a good point, though. Sorry. It was ambiguous. But I guess all I'm trying to say is that there's no animosity here.
Oh, I think that's true.
I keep losing my well, that wasn't the point. I keep losing my train of thought.
But there is animosity between him and the communists.
Yes. Oh, yes. And, sorry. I keep losing my train of thought. I apologize. It's a long day, blah, blah, blah. I'll stop making excuses. But, okay. But the point is he was discussing how in the 1920s, a lot of people were talking about this authority thing. And so, in that sense, it kind of makes sense in my head that the progressives were doing this similar thing in the U.S. And also, I noticed you posted the Thaddeus Russell episode.
Oh, yes.
That we
on
did.
FDR,
where we discussed his whole thesis is that, this is his thesis, right? Is that
sister ideologies,
Yeah, go. Do you want to explain it? Because I've been ranting a little bit, but I think, do you want to say that?
Yeah, I think his thesis is basically that there's a popular conception of World War II that FDR and the Americans and the British and the French were sort of the forces of freedom and capitalism spread through Europe, fighting the evil fascists and also kind of fighting the communists, but kind of teaming up with them against the fascists. When in fact,
and
FDR and the entire progressive movement was just another form of something like European-style fascism. In tons of ways, in its love of war, in its nationalization of industry, in its heavy use of taxation, in its use of media propaganda to sway public opinion, and in its strange obsession with ancient Rome.
And Thaddeus Russell points out that they even had news clippings of Mussolini and Hitler praising FDR and vice versa and stuff. So going back to that point of they were all thinking this way, as Mussolini points out in his book, too, in his historical analysis part, because there was a feeling, it's a general feeling, that liberalism had failed.
Yeah.
He was blaming World War I for liberalism.
Right.
Actually, I thought that was interesting. Or he was blaming it on liberalism.
Right.
Yeah.
World War I is such a weird war.
It's a weird war, man. Everybody has their own theory about what caused it.
I love the Shane Gillis thing about what caused World War I. He's like, absolutely nothing. There's no reason it happened.
Yeah. Which is probably why so many people can come up with reasons for it. Like conspiratorial reasons. Mm-hmm. Or whatever reason. I mean, as Mussolini did, he was using that as a cudgel to say why they should now be in power. He was saying, like, look what liberalism did to us.
Right.
It killed millions of people. Now give me power.
Right. But it's the same. It's Marx. Look what capitalism has done to us. It's made workers have a terrible life. Yeah. So I have a couple notes, just some bullet points that I got reading through it. Let's see. The individual is important to achieve societal goals. We already talked about that. One that was interesting is he talks about the corporation and public unions being crucial to the soul of the fascist state. And so I was reading a little bit on the side because he uses corporation and then corporative is a different word. And so some people like to argue that he's not talking about corporations at all. It's this other thing. But did you have a sense for that, for what he was getting at there?
I had a sense of confusion.
Nice. Yeah.
Because actually in the part that I guess you didn't have, the first part, there's a similar sort of thing. Wait, yeah, you're reading that in the in number 8, right?
The first part talks about corporative, but then also Mussolini talks about corporations.
But there's that quote that they give. Where is that quote? Was that in the second part? Where is the quote that you're talking about?
So there's two different
right.
But so what I'm talking about is in section 1 of the second half.
Under 8.
Under what?
Number 8.
I don't know how it's numbered for you, but
conception of a corporate state. No individuals nor groups, political parties, as you said, right? Associations, labor union, classes outside the state. For this reason, fascism is opposed to socialism, which clings rigidly to class war in the historic evolution. It ignores the unity of the state, which molds the classes into a single moral and economic reality. In the same way, fascism is opposed to the unions of the laboring classes, but within the orbit of the state with ordinative functions, the real needs, which give rise to the socialist movement and to the forming of labor unions, are emphatically recognized by fascism and are given their full expression in the corporative system, which conciliates every interest in the unity of the state. Is that what you're talking about?
That's not what I'm talking about, but that's the corporative word that people like to hinge on.
Right.
Say that he's not talking about modern corporations. I don't exactly know what he's talking about. I was talking about a different section. But let's talk about that. That's interesting. So,
okay. I have another section too.
You have another what?
Yeah. I have another, but yeah. I mean, that sort of makes sense. It's saying that it's against any group that's not the central state group. And so I think the idea is that any corporation is going to be the state.
Mm-hmm. Right.
I think that's all he's saying.
Or at least in service to the state.
Right.
No individuals or groups outside the state. So essentially everything is the state.
It's honestly probably similar to how China's doing their
because, but then it says
now.
Fascism is therefore opposed to socialism, to which unity within the state is unknown. And so this is where what does he mean by socialism?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's true. So he said, in this sense, I think he's sort of talking about socialism in the Marx sense. I think he calls it like historical
But why
socialism
wouldn't there be
or something.
unity within the state in a Marxist sense?
I think he's saying...
Because Marx says that the state is the proletariat. So, of course, there would be unity.
Or, yeah, no, I'm sorry. You're right. Yes. I'm sorry. I think it's just what I meant to say is he's looking at it from the vein of class warfare, which is what Marx does. And yeah, I agree. I think that basically, isn't it the idea, as we said before, socialism, and he says this somewhere, I can't remember, is essentially about raising up or balancing sort of the equity, or the inequity, rather, in society. But that doesn't mean that you completely make it uniform. Like, I don't think socialism is about that. I think it's just about making it so that the lowest parts of society aren't living in squalor, and that it's a more equal, equitable.
Well, I guess I'm thinking
distribution of
about it
wealth.
in the context of reading the Communist Manifesto, and from what my memory of what Marx and Engels were saying was that socialists were generally anti-class antagonism.
Yeah, well, this is why I was saying I think he's looking at it with a Marxist lens, the socialism that he's talking about. But anyway,
but his view of socialist is not a state where there's like unity within the state.
It seems to be, yes.
Yeah.
Yes. But, as to why that is, I can't say,
I don't know.
Obviously. Yeah. Yeah. Any other stuff on that part? Because really I was more confused by this next part where he uses corporation. It's in the second part, in the first section.
Yeah.
I can just read the paragraph. I said then, so this is a quote of him talking at, I think, one of the early meetings of the fascists. I said then, if the bourgeoisie think that we are ready to act as lightning conductors, they are mistaken. We must go towards labor. We wish to train the working classes to directive functions. We wish to convince them that it is not easy to manage industry or trade. We shall fight the technique in the spirit of the rear guard. When the succession of the regime is open, we must not lack the fighting spirit. We must rush, and if the present regime be overcome, it is we who must fill its place. The claimed succession belongs to us because it was we who forced the country into war, and we who led her to victory. The present political representation cannot suffice. We must have a direct representation of all interests. Against this program, one might say it is a return to corporations, but that does not matter. Therefore, I should like this assembly to accept the claims put in by national syndicalism from an economic standpoint. And then he says, is it not strange that the word corporations should have been uttered at the first meeting of Piazza San Sepolcro, when one considers that in the course of the revolution, it came to express one of the social and legislative creations at the very foundations of the regime?
I think so. I think he's talking about guilds. So I think what he's saying, well, at least at the beginning, when he's talking about how, the workers, essentially the proletariat, need to understand that it's very difficult to run, it's labor, to administrate it, to run businesses, things like that. And so there need to be a paternalistic class that is in charge of those things, and the people who are in charge of those things have to be the people who both have led the charge, have won the war, and whose interest it is in maintaining those things properly. And then that's where you get the corporation or guild. And I think that's why he's saying it might seem like he's talking about some old idea, the old guild system, because he does this a lot, where he talks about how, yes, he is referring to history and good and bad things in history, but ultimately that fascism is revolutionary, and it isn't just being conservative and trying to recreate history, but it is living in and acknowledging the history and sort of like utilizing it as it goes.
Interesting. Yeah, because actually he seems to not like the historical, not analyses, but he denigrates history at one point, I think. But anyway, that makes sense. Yeah, it was just interesting. Okay, that makes sense, though. So you think he's essentially talking about the guild?
I think.
So he's saying basically we need to dissolve things and then rebuild them up, though. That's all he's saying, right?
Yeah, but they can't. So I would say, is this the section? Yeah, because he actually mentions Marx in this section, right? Or is that later? Maybe that's later. I think what he's doing is he is directly refuting the idea that the workers should own the means of production, essentially.
Right. Yeah. When I was talking about when he denigrates history, he has a quote later in section 5 against historical materialism. That's what it is, and class. So
that's where he's attacking Marxism.
Right. He says, through this conception of life, fascism becomes the emphatic negation of that doctrine. That doctrine being, I think, liberalism. Yeah. No, it's becomes the emphatic negation of that doctrine which constitutes the basis of the so-called scientific socialism and Marxism. Yeah, sorry. The doctrine of historical materialism, according to which the story of human civilization is to be explained only by the conflict of interests between the various social groups and by the change of the means and instruments of production, just like you were saying. That the economic vicissitudes.
Nice.
I just wanted to say vicissitude.
Nice. Yeah.
Oh man.
So what? Why did we read this? What did this do for us?
It's a good question. Well, I think it is an interesting point, and certainly reading this, I can see the argument that Thaddeus was pointing out, and that I think you subscribe to, that progressivism has fascist ideologies in it, or fascist.
I mean, I even see it. So there's this section, I highlighted it. It sounds to me like the modern U.S. government.
Well, so here's the thing. I think that you could say this sounds like a lot of governments, because I think basically every state at some point has this mentality of like, we are one thing. And I mean, again, I made the point that this seems like essentially what China's doing right now. I mean, you can't have a corporation that isn't in some way connected to the CCP. So, and certainly this was the sort of society that Plato was proposing in his Republic. Mm-hmm. You know, it's like people have been proposing societies that are like uniform and collectivist and working only for the state for, I think, a long period of time. This was what Sparta was.
I agree with that, but I think that there's a certain flavor to fascism.
Well, that's what Benito Mussolini would say too.
There's a vibe to his writing that's very different than Marx.
Yes, certainly.
So here where he talks about, let's see if I can find it. Fascism denies that the majority, by the simple fact that it is a majority, can direct human society. So it's against direct democracy. It did not...
Well, and it's against numbers at one point, they say, right?
Yeah, that's the next thing. It denies that numbers alone can govern by means of a periodical constitution. And it affirms the immutable, beneficial, and fruitful inequality of mankind. So it's embracing inequality and saying that that's a beneficial thing. which, to be honest, I don't disagree with, which can never be permanently
Fascist.
leveled through the mere operation of a mechanical process such as universal suffrage. Right? So this sounds to me like, like Thomas Sowell or some modern day, relatively conservative economist or something like that. He continues, the democratic regime may be defined as from time to time giving the people the illusion of sovereignty, while the real effective sovereignty lies in the hands of other concealed,
secret,
and irresponsible forces. Which sounds exactly like what we have. So we have the
deep state.
But like, whether you call it that or not, our most of the regulations and statutes and laws that we're dealing with are things that are not passed by the people that we elect. So we have the illusion of sovereignty, and our government is essentially run by organizations that are completely separate from it.
Right. I mean, we are a republic. Right. So, it's not like, I mean, the fact that we're not voting on every piece of legislation isn't, I mean, that was essentially how it was designed.
Well, I'm talking about things
we're
like
not directly
the
voting.
Department of Education and the Pentagon and the FBI.
You're talking about
and
the
executive
overreach. Yes, right. The executive branch overreach, which ballooning.
Right.
I'm
not talking about the fact that we have a representative government. I'm saying that we don't have a representative government, but we pretend that we do.
Right. Yes, which I agree with. I guess I just thought the way you were saying it was confusing. Maybe I was confused.
I'm just saying that sounds exactly like what we have. When I read that, I go, that sounds like us right now.
Yeah.
I also agree with his takedown of democracy, because he next goes into this next bit that I talk about a lot, that democracy makes us all into little kings. And democracy is the most ununifying way of setting up a society, true democracy. I think it's really bad.
Yeah, you must have really liked, what did he say the last words of democracy were? It was... It's a pretty funny quote.
Is it the pleasures of the vulgar thing?
Oh,
nice.
Yes, it was Renan, actually, that said it. Yeah. He said, let's see. It is strongly to be feared that the last word of democracy thus understood, I hasten to add that it can also be differently understood, would be a social state in which a degenerated mass would have no preoccupation other than that of enjoying the ignoble pleasures of the vulgar person.
Yeah. That's pretty fun.
Is that what you think it degenerates to?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't think about it that way, but I don't care about degeneracy. I don't care about social morality in that way. I care about, I don't want to be trying to rule my neighbor, and I don't want them to be trying to rule me.
Yeah. No, so one thing this was getting me to think about is something we've talked about, unfortunately, many times before, but it's like when you have people like this out there, people who think this way, that we have, and then actually get other people to think that way, which happens, as I've already said, over and over again in history. You get groups of people become very efficient at working together for a period of time, often a short period of time, before then something happens and the society collapses. But during that short period of time, they're very efficient, they're difficult to fight against, and they're often, and they often are imperialistic, and they're expansive, right? So how do you fight against that as an anarchic opposition?
I mean, I don't know that they're always very efficient. I would say, I guess,
They're not always very efficient, but the ones that are a problem are.
I don't know. I don't think that the U.S.
like
government
Hitler
is efficient.
And like Mussolini.
I don't think the progressives have been efficient because...
Wait, hang on. Yeah. But we are a very powerful force in the world and difficult.
Yes.
We are, right. And so that's the point.
Actually, one of the problems is one of the things that makes it hard to fight is the inefficiency.
Well, and we're because it's so decentralized in some sense.
And nothing's anybody's fault. The bureaucracy hides liability from everything, everybody and everything.
Right. So isn't that interesting? You have a decentralized state within a centralized state.
Right. There's power in decentralization, and that's what makes it hard to fight. It's way easier to fight a king because you know who to kill.
Right, exactly. Yep.
Yeah. So it's not efficient, but that's actually what makes it way harder.
Yeah, well, it's not efficient in one sense, right? But it's very efficient in the don't die sense.
In the don't die sense? Wait, what?
Like it's able to propagate itself, and it's difficult to destroy.
Sure. Yeah. It exists, and it's getting stronger. Yes. So in theory.
And it's expansive, as we know, because it used to be 2 departments. Well, 3 departments. Sorry, it was the Secretary of State, Treasury, and War.
Oh, you mean the cabinet?
The executive branch started as just 3 departments. Mm-hmm. Hamilton, Jefferson, and then whoever the war guy was. I'm sorry, I don't remember.
I think his name was Fred.
I feel like it was Knox or something.
Nice.
Oh, hang on. Let's just look it up. That's an easy thing.
Knox.
Hey, I was right. It was Knox.
Nice.
Henry Knox.
That's a good name.
Yeah, and I think they actually did call it Secretary of War back then, and then it maybe got changed to Defense.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Nice.
Anyway, that's a bunch of useless information. No, I'm just kidding. Trivia.
Yeah, info. Exactly. So what do you think the benefit is? So when I say, why did we read this? Do you feel like reading the Communist Manifesto and this, or one or the other, has any benefit? And do they relate to consciousness at all?
I'm glad you asked.
I'm just trying to help you codify your grand unified theory.
The unified theory of consciousness, which in itself is a unified theory, or field, rather.
Wow. It's so the hell? Fractal.
Yes. Yeah, no, I did think about it in respect to what we've already kind of talked about, how there does feel like there's a law of aggregation and maybe disaggregation. Everything aggregates and disaggregates. And, yeah, exactly. Antushka's making a very suggestive act with his hand. No, just like a wave. But yeah, so in that sense, I was thinking again how I feel like it is natural that people would have this feeling that states need to exist and people need to become cogs within them and grow into larger things than themselves, just like our cells do. And we talked about that, how at every level you see this aggregation into greater things than themselves. Biofilms in the bacterial world do this, right? And are because of that more difficult to kill. Like it's antibiotics that we use don't work. Some antibiotics don't work as well against the same bacteria that would kill it if it was in its solo form. But once it's part of a biofilm, it becomes more resistive. So yeah, I think it sort of falls in line with that. In terms of consciousness, I actually didn't really think about it, believe it or not.
That's funny.
I think I was just, well, I read it very quickly this week. So I didn't have as much time to mull over it.
Okay, well, but yeah. What about, do you feel like that there are popular conceptions of communism and fascism that are different than the sense that you're getting from this, or do you feel like they're pretty much in line with how people feel?
Well, it's interesting. This? Before reading about any of this stuff in depth, no, I mean, I think I always understood that communism was centrally about centralizing control of production.
Right.
And when I thought about fascism, I thought about Mussolini and Hitler and everything they were doing, which sort of aligns to this.
Everyone always forgets Franco. I feel like he gets a...
Franco. You're right.
He gets a raw deal. Well, yeah, sorry Franco.
You're right. No, he was a very good fascist in his own
good
life.
Little fascist.
Yeah. I was just thinking we could do a bit. You know you're a fascist. You might be a fascist.
Yeah.
You might be a redneck if... Yeah. You think that universal peace doesn't exist. Or, yeah, you might be a fascist if you think universal peace doesn't exist.
Yeah.
If war is the health of the state, you might be a fascist.
Yeah, right.
But, yeah, no, I don't know. How do you think it relates to consciousness?
I mean, I don't know. I feel like I don't... I feel like I don't think about consciousness.
What the hell? Why not?
I'm anti-consciousness.
It's the most interesting thing. How come?
I'm not anti-consciousness.
You don't think about consciousness, though?
Not really. I mean, I do in that I think that, like, plants are alive and doing stuff. I think about consciousness in that, we've talked about this before, I think that what we think of as consciousness is far more expansive than we tend to think. And, like, dogs have an amount of consciousness, and turtles and dandelions and things like that.
Oh, yeah, that's right. We did talk about dandelions previously.
Yes.
I remember.
Yeah, I like dandelions. But
I know you do.
Anyway, stuff like that's about. But that's as far as I think about it, because I don't think maybe I don't want to think about it. I don't know what it is. But.
Interesting. Well, no, I think the reason I ask is because I think most people are like you. Mm-hmm. I think most people don't think about it.
We can see from my Reddit post that that's true. Most people are a lot like me. I'm just making a joke about how...
Oh, yeah. No, you're definitely unique in some ways.
Yeah.
I'm just talking about with respect to thinking about consciousness.
Right.
I think most people don't think about it. That's all I'm saying.
Right.
Yeah, and I think in some ways that's one of the reasons that's kind of the central reason I keep talking about it, is because I think by just talking about consciousness, it opens up a lot more awareness in people.
I mean, I was listening to, do you know that guy, Sapolsky? I think he's professor
I have
at
his
Stanford.
Book, Behave. Yeah.
I was listening to a lecture that he was giving some students, and he was like, how many of you believe in free will? And he was like, I hope to change all of your minds by the end of the semester.
Yeah.
The problem is thinking about it like that is then it's just like, well, why do anything? If you have no free will, then there's no reason to do it. You just will do what you will do, and that's the end of the conversation. Right. That's why I don't like thinking about it, because then it makes life boring.
Then you think... Well, but that's interesting, because I never come away thinking I don't have free will.
Well, I think he was saying that you do not.
I know that's what he's saying.
Right.
But, obviously I understand the nervous system better than Sapolsky.
Nice.
I'm just joking.
I don't know.
No, he's a Stanford professor who teaches this stuff. I'm obviously joking. But I see where his point is, because there's determinism underlying all these events that can be understood. As I've said before, it's like it's just a bunch of loops, right, of neurons. But there's something very interesting that I think happens when you connect enough things over a long enough distance.
Right.
That's, I think, and I haven't really figured out how to describe that yet, but I think that's the key.
Right.
It's distance traveled.
Yeah. I think this is where, in terms of what Mussolini was writing about, I think that when he talks about history not being reducible to sort of materialistic battles and things like that, to me, that's actually getting at this a little bit. And I think that both Marx and Mussolini in some ways are attacking sort of scientific materialism.
Yes.
And I think that...
Yes. Though Mussolini calls Marx theory historical materialism.
Yeah, I know. I think that's... Yes, definitely they're not being fully internally consistent.
Dude, imagine if Marx and Mussolini were Redditors fighting about this in a comment section.
That'd be pretty fun.
Sorry, anyway, you continue.
I guess that's where I hold at least a heavy dose of skepticism toward like baseline materialism. Not that I don't think that there's... When I say materialism, I'm not talking about you like to buy makeup and purses. I'm talking about...
yes. You're talking about a materialist basis to maybe the mind and stuff, right?
Yeah, and I don't know that it's not true. It just feels... It feels not
sad.
True to me. It feels sad. Yeah, I mean, honestly, it makes me like extremely depressed.
Right. I think that's why most people turn away from it.
Yeah. It's like, if that is true, then it's like, that's like the most nihilistic thing of all time. Because then, like, it erases all meaning to me.
Yeah, I don't know. Because there's, part of it, the thing that keeps me motivated is that there still is a lot of room for just, I guess you could say, spiritualism in it, because there's so much unknown.
Yeah, but that's like a little bit the God of the Gaps thing, because like less stuff becomes unknown all the time. So your spirit realm gets smaller.
No, it's an interesting question though, because in some ways the more you learn, the more expansive what you don't know becomes.
That's true. That's a good point, because once you find the missing link, now you need two missing links.
Right. Yeah. So maybe we actually know less than we did before.
Ooh, I like
more.
this. This is more my kind of... That sounds great. I love this. The more you know, the less you know. Like as it's axiomatically true. I love it.
Well, the less you know proportionally.
Right.
Relatively. But absolutely.
But what if there is no absolute? What if it's like numbers? It's like what is it what's that guy talks about? What a great statement. No, I think I heard Neil deGrasse Tyson say it.
What if it's like numbers?
No. Orders of infinity.
Chomsky? Oh.
So there are more whole numbers than even numbers, but there's an infinite number of both.
Cantor, the mathematician. Yeah. He was the infinity mathematician.
Right.
That did all that sets with infinity.
Right.
Yes. Yes, I think it's in that line, which...
So then it could be the more you know, the less you know, absolutely.
Yeah.
Because there isn't... Yeah. There's no amount to know.
Right.
Anyway.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know.
So I think with both Marx and Mussolini, I take away that in some ways they are correctly analyzing situations that are actually happening. And their remedy for that seems to be that they want to be God of the universe.
Right.
And if only they were in charge, it would be great.
Right.
They're both just massive excuses to take tons of power.
Yeah.
Which is why I say that ultimately they're not so different.
Right.
I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah. No, I mean, I agree. I still kind of want to get back to that question I posed, though, is like, what do you do in the face of large or... Because, again, I think I align more with you in that. Like, I'm definitely more pro-individual. Like, because I think that's the way to living the most fulfilled life.
Right.
But what do you do in the face of large, organized automata, essentially? It's like, this is always the problem. That a more organized group whose constituents have relatively less freedom come in and,
of course.
just...
They mess up everything. I know.
FS up.
I know. I don't know what you do. I mean, Milton Friedman says you make a state like the United States where the borders are protected from these things and everybody within
where we
the
do
state.
It to them before they could do it to us.
Right, yeah.
Wait, where the borders are what?
So the purpose of the borders of the United States is to protect and enshrine a country where people are given maximum individualistic freedom. And those borders have to not let those other ideologies in and win, kind of a thing. And then within the country, that's why you have freedom of speech, because you can't go around killing people for their ideas, but you have to be able to battle their ideas with your ideas. And so anybody who's trying to not let people battle ideas is like a massive danger.
Yes, which is why we were talking about that bill, why I was so worried about it.
Right.
Anyway, I don't really want to talk about it.
Yeah. But I don't know. It's interesting to know about this stuff, and I don't know if it helps me, because people are just as mad at me about my use of fascist or not fascist.
Yeah, I mean, so how are you feeling? Because you did take a bit of a beating. I'm sorry. I should be in the trenches with you.
Yeah, I took a beating.
On Reddit.
Oh, like you think I lost?
Yeah. I don't think you lost. I
don't care. I think that some people make good points, and I think that some of it is me not being clear enough. Some of it is me just disagreeing. A lot of it's definitional disagreements.
Right.
I think that really it's a bad forum for having a real conversation, and it's like this thing. I'm also just trying to promote the podcast, so I don't care. I'm sort of happy that it's sparking something, and I hope that it's ultimately productive for us, for the podcast, for our thoughts.
Yeah, I think it. I mean, first off, again, I applaud your thick skin, because I am just too sensitive for it. It's like, even the thing you sent me, I was just thinking about all the different ways to respond, and I wrote up something and then it actually got deleted because anyway, but and then I was just like, screw this, I've been spending too much time on this already. And getting riled up, and I was like, I can't. My blood pressure can't handle this. I'm too sensitive. So kudos. But yeah, I mean, I think it does, though, all that being said, have benefits in giving you what sort of distilled thoughts that other people have about things. I think it is good for aggregating those kind of ideas.
Right.
So, like you were saying, it brought up interesting points that you realize when you're discussing these ideas with other people, this is how some other people are thinking about it.
Right.
Whereas we wouldn't know if we were just talking to each other.
Yeah. I think my post from this week was better than the one from last week, because I think it was clearer where I stand. The responses made more sense.
Yeah. Yes. I think
whether or not we agree with them, I think that the responses were more directly related.
It's interesting because the thing you sent me, which was in response to phrase about the workers being better now than in the past, basically. Comfort.
Yes, I said comfort. That was my term, because I was trying to search for the term, and it wasn't the exact right term. But. Right,
and that was going to be one thing. Is part of the reason I ultimately didn't respond was it was just going to be a lot of also trying to.
I should have said
what
conditions,
my argument was,
or something like that.
Yeah, but it was the right idea. I think that they said that comparing absolute comfort is sophistry, which I don't understand, and I didn't understand their sentence that they had as an example for why you don't make that argument. So I was like, I don't even know where to start here.
Yeah.
And look,
you should have said their response to my post was meaningless or something like that.
Yeah, no, because I'm not trying to
of course.
fight anybody. But they also said, it was incorrect to use the term proletariat revolution.
I mean, that's silly. So that one I thought that is silly.
Well, Marx uses that term.
It's word policing to try and get away with what you want the situation to be.
And they started off with that, which I thought was disingenuous. And again, like that was the first thing I was going to respond with is the quote where he uses the term proletarian revolution, technically. But he says that. So it's like, how is it incorrect to use the term proletarian?
Well, so proletariat is the noun, proletarian is the adjective.
Yes.
Right. So what?
No, but they weren't making that point. They were saying that it's incorrect to use the term proletariat revolution.
Right, because once the revolution has happened, the proletariat ceased to exist.
Yes, there are no classes. Right. But again, Marx used this term. So
also, that's not where we are. So how do we have a conversation if you are taking away all of the language that you can possibly use to have the conversation?
Right. And I also just don't. And so but I don't understand why it's sophistry to compare working conditions between time periods.
I don't know. What is sophistry?
Well, it's a derogatory term for
that's what
an intellectual
was convicted of, right?
Well, sophists were the intellectuals in ancient Greece, and it became a derogatory term for like somebody who presents as an intellectual but actually is just an idiot, basically.
Right.
Doesn't really understand.
Basically, I would say that a large percentage of the comments I get on Reddit are accusing me of something like that.
Yes.
Like basically being an idiot, but kind
presenting
of
as an intellectual. Okay. Well, can we just say
it could be true. I do hold space that I wouldn't know if that was the actual case. So
well, you should just open and be like, look, everybody, I understand I am not an intellectual.
Right.
And then proceed. No. Yeah.
I wish I were a professor, and then I started all my classes like that way. Listen, I am not an intellectual.
Not an intellectual.
You should not listen to me, but
I played one on TV.
Yeah, right.
Okay. We'll be here all week, folks. Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, that was my rebuttal to them. I may write it up. I don't know. It's just I know then I'm going to get into this whole long thing.
He'll have a response to you.
Yeah, and I'd rather just have them on the podcast.
Sure. I don't think it'll be as fun of a podcast as you think it'll be, but
I think it'll be interesting.
Yeah,
that's all.
Yeah.
Anyway,
wow. I'm just looking back at last week, in the intellectual dark web when I posted about the capitalism versus socialism in World War II. It has 86 comments.
Oh my god!
And 0 on the upvote. Talk about ratio.
You got ratioed for sure.
Pretty bad.
Oh, that's kind of legendary, though. To be fair,
it's kind of funny.
Yeah. You remember how? We've talked about this, how I think this is one of the reasons I like you so much, too, is because you do have this way of just, pissing people off without even trying to.
Yeah.
Like Richard Davis.
I just say something. It's not even that long a post. It's 2 sentences.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of beautiful.
It's really. It's also some of these responses are really long. They're getting in there.
Yeah. Well, people are talking to themselves too. To be fair, right?
They're like,
no. I mean, they're talking to each other rather.
Yeah.
They're debating each other.
I haven't checked in on this in a while, but it's gone kind of crazy. It's pretty funny.
Jesus. Yeah.
Yeah. The intellectual dark web room does not like me.
Well, they still let you in there.
Yeah.
That's kind of nice. The mods must
not hate you. It's pretty funny
because
actually I used to be on their Discord server and it would be the same thing. They're just I think they just think I'm a moron.
Yeah. Well, I think that you are just honest about what you don't know where most people aren't.
Uh-huh.
Which is, again, one of the things I like about you.
Right. Well, yeah, I don't know. I don't think that's how they see it.
Well, yeah, but who
They're
cares?
he's being honest about what he doesn't know. That's not what they're thinking.
I know, obviously. Yeah. I'm just trying to pump you up.
Oh, well, thanks. Aw, shucks. Yeah.
Aw, shucks. This has gotten to be a pretty emotional end.
Yeah. We have a show coming up.
Oh, yeah, we do.
Oh, yeah. June 1st. We're back at our stomping ground. Yeah. I feel like at this point it's that, right?
We haunt it.
Yeah. We haunt it, exactly. Yeah, Dog and Bone in Dripping Springs, June 1st. It's a Saturday.
Yep. It could be fun.
Yep.
Yeah, we might even be playing outside.
I hope so.
Well, we probably will, right?
I would think so.
If it doesn't rain.
Yeah.
I feel like every time I have come out for a show,
raining,
it's been like raining.
Yep.
What's up with that, man?
I don't know.
I guess it's just a rainy season right now.
Yeah. Yep. But yeah, that's just a couple weeks away.
Cool.
Yep.
Do you have some good gigs this week?
Yeah. No, I have some fun ones coming up. Playing at Pootie's Roadhouse on Saturday.
Oh.
It's a honky tonk.
Nice.
Yeah.
Are you with a band or on your own?
Bill Cody.
Wascom's.
Playing a lot of country songs. Guitars, Cadillacs, and hillbilly music.
That's cool. Who are you playing with? Or like, is it one of the bands that you play with normally?
I only play with them every now and then, but yeah.
Do you not want to promote them?
What? Bill Cody.
Okay. Oh, did you say that already?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. I didn't realize that was the name.
Bill Cody
Sorry.
Music on Instagram.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Yeah. I got a bunch of sound gigs. I don't know, just gigs, just playing, just stuff.
Oh, that's cool.
Yep.
I have no gigs.
Yes, you do. You have a gig.
Oh, sorry. I have one gig. I forgot. I already forgot. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
I meant I have no gigs this weekend.
Okay.
How about that?
Yeah.
But I did get a new guitar. I'm pretty excited.
Oh, yeah, that's
that.
right.
Yeah.
I'm excited to hear it.
Yeah. No, it's good. It's good.
Nice.
Cool.
Right.
Well, we probably did it.
Yeah. All right. I think we did it. All right. Goodbye, everybody.
See ya.